Hi there, so here's another video just to help you out with your graphing aspect of your assignment. And basically the assignment wants you to graph your scenarios just to show how effective they are. And if I just go to, you can see there it says demonstrate the effectiveness of a variety of strategies aimed at reducing. Use graphs to illustrate the effect of each strategy. So there's a couple of ways of doing that, and I'll show you both of those ways, and you can make a decision of what you want to do with that. So I'm using the strategy of adding a lump sum because that's the one I've used when I've given you other information on our Facebook page, and I felt like that kind of brings it all together nicely for you. So if I was doing my strategy, this is numbered 1 because I've got a couple of different ways I want to show you how you can set it out. So you don't need to call it number 1 in your assignment. But the strategy I'm using here is adding a lump sum. So underneath that heading, I would have an intro to the strategy, why I'm using it, how useful it is, etc., etc. I'd have all my maths in here, and then I'd have my table of results. So here I've put my table of results. So the strategy I chose to do is I added $6,000 after 1 year, after 10 years, and after 20 years in the term of 25 years of the loan. I did my calculations, which are up here, and here are my results tabulated. So this is the interest saved in dollars and the number of months saved for each strategy. So I can now use a graph for this, and the way I do that is I would copy my table, Control copy, Control C, going into Excel, and then in Excel I'll just pop it in. So there's the information, and then from there you can decide on how you want to graph it. There's a number of different ways. You might want to do it in 2 sections. So here I'm just taking the money saved, and let me just move this. So I'm going to insert, and I might just do this one so I can have a look at it. So obviously that's useless, but no, not useless, but there we go. So I could do that, and then obviously I would need to go in there and put some information on here. So go in here, put on my titles, etc., and so label them up, label all the information up. So this shows me information and how much interest is being saved. Interest in dollars, the year of the loan, and this would just be interest saved using a lump sum of $6,000 in my case. So there's one type you could use, or you may want to go for something different. I'm trying to think, what was the other one I chose? I think it was just a very simple line graph, but I put the little nodes on, and the reason I put the nodes on just because it makes it stand out a little bit better. And then obviously you need to go in and tidy that up. It looks very boring at the moment. Put in your axis titles, put in your chart title, and then that's a graph that you could use. And then once you've got one graph for that, you can then do the graph for the other information you have, the number of months saved. So I'll highlight that, hold down Control and highlight that. So they're the 2 columns I want. And again, insert the graph of your choice. And now on this graph, you've still got the same thing on the bottom, but now on this side, when I put my title in, I will have months saved. So there's that little graph. Now, if you want to have both of those bits of information on the graph at the same time, again, you can do that as well. There's a few different ways. Now, I found this little graph that I quite like the look of, and where did I find it? No, let me think. Hold on, it's on my other sheet. Oops. Here we go. So if I click on that, it doesn't really tell me where I found it. So you can see this one here has got the columns, and I'd have to change these names or remove them, but the columns represent the money saved and the interest saved in dollars, and then the line represents the months saved. Like I said, I'd have to label that up, but I think that quite looks good as well. So I'll see if I can find that in a moment. But you can see on my graphs here what I've done. You could do this and this, or you can put the combined one together as well. Okay, so if you want to do the combined one, I'll just move back up to Insert in Charts. It is, have I forgotten already? It's this one, I believe. Yep, so it's not that one, it's this one here. Click on that. And you can see I've got all the information on there. I've got both sets of information on there. So I think that's the one I would like to use for my assignment. I'm just going back to find my last one. Here it is. And then I'm just going to copy it and pop it into my Word document. So I'm going to put so after my table, I will put in the graph, make it look lovely, and then you would discuss your results in depth. You can discuss your results here and then summarize it at the end, or you can do it all at the end, but it's probably better to talk about it as you go, what's fresh in your mind, and it kind of makes sense to read it off that way as well. So in here, I would look at my chart, referring to my chart. Don't ever put anything in that you don't refer to. You can say the table was in, using Excel, the table was put into a chart form, and now looking at this chart, I can see blah, 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 and then talk about all the things that you can find there. So that's one way of doing it. You can have that little strategy. Or a second way of doing it is you can use the bank graphs. And I've done a video on using the bank graphs, and that's something you haven't seen before, and please feel free to go in and use them. So on the other video, you can go and watch how to do that, but I'll just show you quickly how to do this. So it says here so same stuff as before, but this time I'm going to use a graph from the bank site. Now with the bank site, you can only do one scenario, like year 1, year 10, after 20 years. So I would say, looking at my table, this was the most effective one, and then I would talk about the results and what's happening as years go on, and refer to the money saved and the time saved and how it reduces and what your optimal solution is. This would be your optimal solution here in my strategies. So this is the one that I would graph if I'm just going to give one graph. So what you can do is you can go over to a banking website, and I've got down here. So I can go over to Suncorp, and I'm just going to move this up. So if I go over to Suncorp and I go into the calculators, so here is the calculator from the Suncorp website, and I put in my information. So here I'm borrowing this amount over 25 years. Here's my made up interest rate that I've used. I'm putting in $6,000, and I've got 20 years in here, but I chose after 1 year to be my best scenario. So I need to click out of that for it to apply it. All right, so now you can see I've done that. And over here, you can now see, well, it's told me what my monthly repayments are. And that's good to know because I've just checked my answers that I did in my calculations and I nailed it. So you can check that. Down here, you can see how much interest is saved. So again, you can check your calculations to see if they've worked out. And you can also see how much time is saved. So these are really handy, these calculators, really just for checking your answers. So I quite like these graphs personally. It's just that, the other graphs are quite good as well at showing how the interest has changed. And on these, you can move this little thing around, and it just shows you how much money is still yet to be paid. And you can scroll down, you can make comparisons, you can go into the yearly breakdown that shows you after 2 years how much interest is paid on the two different scenarios. So you've got the whole term of the loan there. So you get a lot of information. And for some of you, that might be just too much information. So, it's up to you what you want to choose to use. Now, when I screenshot this, I'll put this somewhere useful. So I'm going to put it at year 1 because it shows that you've got the lump sum principal is $403,804 because it's now $6,000 cheaper or down on the original principal, $409. So I would probably choose there when I go to do a screenshot rather than just somewhere random. Make it purposeful. So another benefit of this graph is you can see the difference in colours, and that difference in colours there, the light green and the dark green. The dark green shows you the new loan and the light green shows you the original loan. So you get that little sliver in here shows you how much money is being saved, and you can see it gets a little bit fatter as it gets towards the end because that's compounding interest at work. So I would snip this and save it. And I've already done that. So back to my document. And this is the one I wanted. I actually did all my scenarios so I could check my answers. Right, copy that. So this was this was method number 2. So I've got my graph here. I'm going to get my best scenario. So using that calculator, pop the graph in. I've got a nice little graph. Now with your graphs, make sure it's readable, not too big that it looks really clunky and simple, but make it tidy. And then you can look at this and you need to talk about this graph. So this graph here needs to be big enough to be able to read all the information that you've got on there. So when you talk about that graph in your results, you need to, make it useful, make it relatable back to this. So you can talk about how you've checked your answers. You can see the answers are there. You can talk about how the difference between the two loans increases over time and why that happens. Whatever you feel like you need to talk about there. Don't want to give you too much. So then you can discuss your results here. And if you want to make comparisons between your 3 strategies, then you can go back to your table and you can use that, because the table is a great way for showing trends. Look, that's decreasing. That is also decreasing. And you can look at what's going on. So that you've got something to talk about there. And then the third way you could write this up is you could just literally put all of the scenarios in from the bank. So, oops, video making at its best here. So using Suncorp Bank again, go in and just put here, use all 3 of those graphs, and here those 3 graphs here, and you can move them up and put them into your working and make them big enough to be able to see, not so big that they're taking up heaps of space. Or you may want to put them in your appendices and have your best scenario here and the 2 extras in the appendix, because the appendix doesn't count, but you can refer to it, and that way you can also include that as a way of checking your answers are correct. And I love to see them as well, because then it helps me check your answers are correct. But hey, it's not your main focus. So hopefully that helps you with sorting out how to do some graphing. I'm just going to go back to that first one here because I think it's just lovely. Okay, and you can work out what kind of graphing you want to put in. Put in 1 graph per strategy. So for changing frequencies, for lump sum, etc., etc. You don't have to put one in for everything that you do, just 1 for each strategy. I hope that helps. Good luck, guys.